Who watches The Watchmen? Well, HBO is hoping you do, and so do lots of other people. Time again for Under the Tides, powered by the one and only Heroes Comics here in Fresno at Shaw and Highway 41. I'm Rash from the Morning Blaze here at 105.1 The Blaze, and according to Instagram, work has begun on an animated series based on the 1986 Alan Moore graphic novel, The Watchmen. No details really as far as like a release date or even what the content of the show is going to be quite honest. If it's going to be a retelling of the original 1986 story, or if it's going to be a series that takes place prior to the murder mystery that unfolds in Alan Moore's tale. I don't know. That's what I'm hoping for. But to give a little background for people who aren't too familiar with The Watchmen, the graphic novel, or the silver screen, big budget, major motion picture that Zack Snyder directed in 2009, here are kind of the nuts and bolts of it. It's not your typical comic book where like these characters exist in the DC universe. It was published by DC Comics, but this was a standalone graphic novel. All of the characters are introduced in this, and the story completes in this, and that's all you ever see of them again. Other than Dr. Manhattan, he's kind of been rolled into the DC rebirth thing that's happening right now, but we'll get into that if time permits a little bit later on. This book kind of set the standard for what can be done in a graphic novel format. The gist of it is you have these vigilante superheroes that get together, much like kind of Batman-esque. None of them have any real abilities. None of them are real superheroes, but they wear costumes and they fight crime. And this starts taking place in the post World War II era. So in the I think between the late 40s and 50s, the original Watchmen are kind of formed. I think they're called the Minutemen in the story. I'm now kind of confused, but the original group is formed in the mid 50s, and they are just vigilantes, just do-gooders who dress up and fight crime with no actual superpowers. Everything changes, however, when in the 60s a science experiment gone wrong creates Dr. Manhattan, who is the lone super individual in all of this story. No one has any superpowers throughout the entire storyline other than Dr. Manhattan, who has like infinite power. I mean, think of like a god, and that's what he is. He can control matter. He can control time. He can be anywhere at any time. He doesn't need to breathe. He builds a glass fortress on Mars just by thinking about it and going there. I mean, this is the kind of power that this character has, and that changes the course of events in Earth from the 60s on. So I say it takes place in an alternate timeline because they create that event, but then try to stay within geopolitical history from that moment on. So imagine the Vietnam War if instead of atomic weapons, the United States had a god in the military for them. Like, how would that have impacted that war? It would have, right? Think about the Cold War with the Russians and the nukes. How would that have transpired if instead of just having nukes, we had nukes and a god? Like, think about how that would change things. And then think about how people, everyday humans who don't have that ability would see that figure. The impact on society, the impact on technology, the things he's able to create and do, and how that would impact day-to-day life. So that's kind of the universe that this story exists in, if you can think about that. Now, the interesting part of this starts at the very, very beginning of the original Watchmen story when the comedian, who was one of those original non-superpowered costume-wearing vigilantes, is murdered by a shadowy character, and the investigation begins to figure out who killed this guy. So it's basically just your whodunit murder mystery. But when you throw in all of these vigilantes, ex-vigilantes, the guys who are clinging on to that world, Rorschach is one of my favorite characters of all time. Clings on to the idea of vigilantes and is quite unstable. When you throw all of that together, it does create a very, very I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, a story that resonates very, very well with people. And the end of it, for those who have not seen the movie or especially read the book, there's a twist at the end where humanity confronts Dr. Manhattan that is really, really, really good. So if you haven't read it, I recommend this to everyone, even if they're not comic book fans. Buy this book, see the movie, do something. Watchmen is fantastic. The movie is a little long and kind of drones on for some people, so I recommend the book more. But either way, this is something that you need in your life one way or another. And I'm very, very excited about the idea that HBO is going to bring an animated series. And like I said, I hope it's not just a retelling of the story I already know about the hunt for who killed the comedian. I hope it takes place, at the early, the early birth, so to speak, of Dr. Manhattan, the beginning of that, through the Vietnam War and all that kind of stuff, when the costume vigilantes are still active. Like that's the story I want to see. So I'm hoping that that's what they're doing. But again, get this book. Check this out. And as far as Dr. Manhattan in today's comic books is concerned, like I said, they've started to roll him into the DC rebirth that occurred, almost 2 years ago now, where they're starting to kind of rewrite all of the DC characters' origin stories, your Superman, Batman, Flash, all of that. And it's seeming like Dr. Manhattan, at one point it was seeming like maybe he was the cause of everything kind of resetting. First it was Flashpoint and the Flash, then it turned into be something bigger than him, and then it might be Dr. Manhattan, and now it's Superman and Dr. Manhattan together. It's confusing, but I like how they're finally rolling in that character into the rest of the universe instead of just keeping him isolated in just the Watchmen book. But again, from me to you, it's worth your time. Check out the comic, the graphic novel. Go down to Heroes, ask Dave where you can find it. If he doesn't have a copy, I'm sure he can get you one. Watchmen. Check it out and be watching on HBO. It's coming soon. Thanks for watching Under the Tights. Today's new books include a few different Batman books, including the Red Death Batman, which it's like a Flash Batman thing. Looks pretty cool. You got a new Guardians of the Galaxy out today, and Mighty Mouse #4. That one's for me. Who would win a fight between Mighty Mouse and Superman? One's a comic and one's a real dude. I just don't know.